Stocks mixed ahead of tonight's presidential debate. I'm Lisa Bernhard with Reuters, and joining me today is Zach Hill of Horizon Investments. Zach, tonight we have the first face-off between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and whether it's tariffs, taxes, inflation, regulation, what is it that investors will be listening for specifically at tonight's debate?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Lisa. This is the first debate, and it's the first opportunity for these two candidates to really get into some specifics around their platform. They've been talking about a lot of things, floating some trial balloons in the press over the last few weeks. And so we're going to be watching, quite intensely to see if there's anything that the market can really sink its teeth into that's going to really impact, kind of what parts of the economy and what sectors of the market are going to be winning and losing, depending on what happens in November.
Kamala came out strong when she took over for Joe Biden. Those poll numbers perhaps have softened a bit. Has that at all benefited the Trump trade that we saw post-assassination attempt on Donald Trump?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it really hasn't. I mean, in July, we saw a really sharp rotation. It did happen to come around an inflation report that kind of cleared the way for the Fed to start easing here in a week and a half. We saw a really sharp rally in small caps and in energy and financials. And we're not really seeing that this time around as the polls kind of readjust themselves in favor of President Trump. And so that's something that we're paying attention to. I do think it's notable that we did not, the market did not trade, the changes in polls the way it did last July.
We are seeing shares of Trump media up about 4% right now. If there is a clear winner in the debate tonight, how do you think markets might react overall tomorrow?
Well, that's a tough question because we haven't really seen a lot of policy prescriptions that have been really firm from either candidate. So it is going to depend a little bit, on what is discussed tonight at the debate. If we have some things that we can really sink our teeth into, that will be something that is potentially interesting for markets and could impact, equities up or down one way or the other. The other thing to consider is just the overall uncertainty. Polls have been moving around quite a lot over the last few weeks, and markets generally don't like uncertainty. And so I think that has contributed a little bit to the volatility we've seen in markets over the last few weeks. And so, as that uncertainty passes and resolves itself tomorrow, we will be watching quite closely to see, if that impacts overall index performance.
Right now, the Dow is down and the S&P and NASDAQ are up, the NASDAQ making the biggest move higher. What is moving stocks today?
Today's been a pretty choppy day and also very light in terms of volumes. Really, the last few days have been that way. But we are starting to see a little bit of stability in the AI trade. Certainly, earnings from Oracle last night are helpful in that regard. And just a really sharp sell-off in semiconductor stocks so far this month. Really fierce rotation. And so we're seeing a little bit of that bounce back. Here today, there's not a lot going on other than that, though. And so, really everyone's kind of sitting around waiting to see what, if anything, is discussed at the debate tonight.
So what's your biggest concern for markets going forward through the end of the year?
And we've generally been more positive than most on markets. And kind of the underpinning of that has been just a refusal to bet against an employed consumer. And so the thing that worries me the most, it keeps me up at night, is the idea that we're going to start to see job losses and people cannot get another job. And that's important in the context of kind of what we've seen in terms of people's balance sheets. Typically we had a recession and we came out of it. Typically people's balance sheets are in shakier position. But as we've seen with home prices and equity prices, actually the consumer is in a really strong shape. And so the only thing that we really worry about is job losses that would hit consumer spending and would feed through into company earnings. We don't think we're there yet, but it's certainly something that we're paying attention to as we notice that obviously the labor market is not as hot as it was a year ago.